Manchester City only have themselves to blame for James Trafford. Issue Manchester City goalkeeper. James Trafford had a game to forget against Tottenham, but he isn't exactly being helped to settle. James Trafford looked like he wanted to swallow the ground up by the time Manchester City's defeat to Tottenham was over. A 2-0 home loss sucked most of the momentum out of their 4-0 win at Wolves last week, and Trafford had been personally responsible. The pass inside his box to Nico Gonzalez was never on, and made people remember just how good Ederson is with his feet in pressure situations, even if he had done similar at the Club World Cup. More worrying for Pep Guardiola was the way Trafford completely lost confidence after that, creating uncertainty in the second half as the team should have been driving for a way back into the game. Nobody should be written off after one game though, especially when it comes after an impressive showing the week before, and even more so when it comes amid so much uncertainty. If Trafford thought he knew what he was getting into when he joined City at the start of the month, the last few weeks have been chaotic. Guardiola insisted that Ederson remained his number one ahead of the first Premier League game last week, yet minutes later, Trafford knew he was starting with the Brazilian coming down with an untimely bout of sickness. After another week where both had trained, the manager couldn't confirm who his number one was, and ended up deciding the night before the game that Trafford would keep his place. With Ederson watching on from the bench, that is more pressure for Trafford than it had been the week before. The 22-year-old also has to cope with the uneasy, lingering feeling that Ederson will leave for Galatasaray before the window is out, and Champions League winning prime of his life, Gianluigi Donnarumma, will arrive from Paris Saint-Germain to be the new number one and present Trafford with a much more difficult challenge. It has been said about Stefan Ortega that there are a shortage of options for him because most clubs with any sense have already sorted their number one going into the season, but City cannot include themselves in that bracket. That isn't a good place to be in, and it isn't fair on Trafford. City's signings have thrived under Guardiola more often than not because of their quality, but also because they have been incorporated into a finely tuned machine. They have been helped with their integration by knowing exactly what is expected of them and being helped along with that by others who know what they are doing. Tottenham has to go down as a missed opportunity for Trafford to make more of a claim for the number one shirt, but he has walked into a goalkeeping department that is the most unclear it has been since Guardiola was bombing Joe Hart out of the squad in his first summer in charge and trying to sign anybody who played for Barcelona. Trafford has to recover his focus after Saturday, but so do City in the next week if they are to cut out the wobbles going forward. Manchester City only have 4 certain starters versus Brighton. Manchester City were beaten by Tottenham in the Premier League on Saturday, having impressed on the opening day against Wolves. Manchester City started the season with an abundance of positives at Wolves. But the weekend defeat to Tottenham means the Blues now have a raft of selection questions. Some of those who started at Molineux couldn't follow up their fine performances against Spurs. Pep Guardiola only made 2 changes to his 11 for the Etihad defeat, but he could make plenty more for the trip to Brighton this weekend. City arguably only have 4 certain starters for the contest, with question marks over who starts in goal and in the advanced midfield positions, while the injury news will impact the backline. James Trafford was given the nod in goal against Tottenham, but suffered a poor afternoon and was at fault for the second goal. Ederson is fit again and was on the bench last time out, and the Brazilian could return, but transfer links persist and the 32-year-old might not even be a City player come the weekend. If he does depart, the Blues will move for out of favour PSG stopper Gianluigi Donnarumma. It's a fascinating plot to play out over the final weeks of the window, and it means there remains plenty of uncertainty around the position. At the back, John Stones and Ruben Dias will likely continue their partnership, particularly given Rayan Ait-Nouri's injury. If the Algerian is past fit to start, then Josko Gvardiol, who has yet to feature this season due to his own injury, could come into the middle of defence, but the Croat may yet be needed at left back. On the opposite side, Rico Lewis has been given the nod thus far, but he struggled against Spurs, having impressed at Wolves, and Matheus Nunes will be eyeing a start. Further forward, Tijani Reinders and Erling Haaland are perhaps the only 2 certain starters with question marks elsewhere. Nico Gonzalez hasn't fully convinced in the middle of the park, and Rodri will assume the role when fully fit, but he's not a definitive starter while City manage his return to fitness. City have an embarrassment of riches across the three attacking positions, yet perhaps no nailed-on selection. Phil Foden is fit again and will surely be a long-term pick. Jeremy Doku and Oscar Bob have been given the nod out wide in the opening 2 games, but Foden and Omar Marmoush will be targeting starting spots. Bernardo Silva is club captain and could return, given Rayan Cherki struggled to impact the game on his first start. And that's without mentioned Ilkay Gundogan, who could also depart this week, and Nico O'Reilly. Gianluigi Donnarumma to Manchester City. Transfer latest as intrigue continues. Manchester City could yet sign Gianluigi Donnarumma this summer, but there is confusion over their goalkeeping situation. Manchester City are waiting for clarity on Ederson's future ahead of a potential move for Paris Saint-Germain goalkeeper Gianluigi Donnarumma. City have denied claims they have agreed personal terms with the 26-year-old Italian international as they consider a complete revamp of their goalkeeping department this summer. The Blues will only make a move for the PSG stopper if Ederson leaves the club. Galatasaray's bid for the 32-year-old has been turned down, but they could yet return for a player with only 1 year left on his contract. Ederson was on the bench for City's defeat to Tottenham on Saturday, with James Trafford handed a second successive start after his £27 million move from Burnley. Trafford made a mistake for Spurs' second goal, and after the game, Pep Guardiola insisted that nothing should be read into the selection in terms of his long-term number 1 this season. There is the potential for a change in goal for Sunday's trip to Brighton, but much of that will depend on what happens with Ederson's future. Galatasaray are yet to return with another bid for a player. City are open to selling, given he has just a year left on his contract. If he doesn't leave the club, it is unlikely that City will press ahead with plans to sign Donnarumma. PSG want around £40 million for the goalkeeper, but their hand is weakened by the fact that Luis Enrique has made it clear that the Italian has no long-term future at the club. City is Donnarumma's most likely destination at this stage of the window, but club officials insist the move isn't as far advanced as personal terms being agreed. He was given a big farewell at the Parc des Princes on Friday night, but doesn't appear